I think a lot of us, if not most, have scrolled through or even clicked on headlines that go something like this. Quote, "Scientists brought this prehistoric animal back from extinction." End quote. Such a headline absolutely conjures mental images reminiscent of Jurassic Park and other compelling fiction. And I'll be honest, if you're an unashamed geek like me, it sounds very exciting. But come on. Back from extinction? Is that even possible? Is this fake news, clickbait, pure hype? Or is it scientific truth? Or is it something that exists in more of a biological gray area? I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, and in this episode of the HMNS Beyond the Bones podcast, we'll seek to bring truth back from extinction. If you've seen the headlines, you've seen this headline. Quote, "Direwolf brought back from extinction." End quote. The company behind the resurrection of the 10,000 years extinct direwolf is called Colossal Laboratories and Biosciences. If you go to their website, that I will of course link in the podcast description, the company is quite heavy on hyping the, quote, "back from extinction" pitch. The verbiage is prevalent and obviously shameless. And look, I say none of this to undermine or detract from the all but miraculous achievements the company has actually accomplished. Also, as part of the marketing machine for the Houston Museum of Natural Science, this podcast is part of an understandable effort to put our museum in front of as many people as possible towards the goal of getting the audience interested in visiting our museum. However, if you've been following this podcast or the HMNS YouTube channel I manage, you may know that authenticity is the foundation on which I manage the YouTube channel and this podcast. So, when a headline or a for-profit company makes a claim so bold as "brought back from extinction," it doesn't just pique curiosity, it honestly dings the radar of suspicion. So, did Colossal really bring the direwolf back from extinction? Well, no. Of course not, despite their efforts to convince you otherwise, which I'll get into later. The direwolf is still very, very extinct. So, for the love of White Fang, what is actually going on here? To get us started, I wanted some perspective from an expert in extinct animals, and I went to sit down with our resident paleontologists. Bueller? Well, this seems a bit anticlimactic. As it turns out, many paleontologists don't want to touch this subject with a 10-foot pole. Ooh, the plot thickens. And it's not just a conflict of interest. It's not like in Jurassic Park where Dr. Alan Grant half jokes that the dinosaurs in the park will make digging for fossils obsolete. No. We'll get into some of the actual science behind the direwolf and Colossal Biosciences, but honestly, there are some red flags to acknowledge first. The biggest red flag to some, if not most, and your humble host included, is the company's seemingly hell-bent effort to, quote, "redefine the meaning of de-extinction," end quote. And no, not in a cute hype marketing way like a sports drink company would, quote, "redefine water." Colossal Biosciences is literally trying to force the official dictionary and scientific redefinition of the term de-extinction to validate their mission and accomplishments. This isn't just my opinion. Go to the website and see for yourself. As of publishing this podcast, it is literally the first tab you click and the first thing you see on that page. Verbatim, the very first headline you see is, quote, "The world's definition of de-extinction is flawed," end quote. And I'm sorry, but that's wild. It's one thing to make a new scientific discovery, make it public, have every scientist study and confirm the finding, and then amend a scientific definition. It's something like this. We've noticed that 2 plus 2 equals 4. Here, go over the data yourselves. Are we in consensus? Very good then. The definition of 2 plus 2 includes that the sum is most likely 4. Get Webster on the phone. But that isn't what Colossal has done with the direwolf. The company has done amazing things that have potential genuine ecological upsides, or potential downsides, but they have absolutely not brought back an extinct species. And the only way to increase the appeal of what they have accomplished is to bend the world's definition of de-extinction to fit their objective, noble or otherwise. Yeah, I said that with my chest. But that's not how scientific integrity works. It is a shocking red flag. Scientific discovery and achievement should rest on its merits and the accomplishments of those working tirelessly towards understanding our world. Colossal biosciences have absolutely accomplished something that deserves merit. So it's a bit of a bummer to lean so heavily into that redefinition red flag when, honestly, they might not need to. Here's what's actually going on with the quote-unquote direwolf. To be blunt, it is not a direwolf. The direwolf is still very much extinct. These direwolves are in fact genetically modified gray wolves. Colossal Biosciences has altered the DNA of the gray wolf to enhance traits similar to direwolves. Traits like their coat's color, growth rate, etc. to mimic direwolf attributes, but it's not, in any biological way, a direwolf. Y'all know I like analogies, so remember Mr. Potato Head? If you swap its human ears for cat ears, it's not a cat. It's still a plastic potato, but with ears that look like a cat's. You didn't make a cat, you made a plastic potato look like a cat. I really don't mean to oversimplify what Colossal has achieved. It is just not a direwolf. It is a gray wolf with traits similar to direwolf. I don't want to overcomplicate things either. As you're listening to this, I know you're likely driving and watching out for people not using their blinkers, or you're at your sink doing dishes or whatever, trying not to get cut by your onion slicer. I think I still have scars. So let's highlight, hopefully in a digestible way, the colossal achievement achieved by Colossal, and the potential ecological impacts this technology could carry. DNA editing is no small feat. I mean, it's technically microscopically small, but it's immense in practice. Basically, and for the sake of digestibility, I do mean basically, DNA modification is like going into the settings menu of your phone, computer, TV, video game, what have you, and turning settings on or off, up or down, or otherwise adjusting to give you a desired result. So, very early in a gray wolf's development, Colossal was able to go into the wolf's options menu and turn up its growth, change the tint of its fur, etc., to more resemble a direwolf. It's kind of like me setting up my golf game avatar to look more like Jason Momoa, when really, I'm 6'1" with a dad bod. But now, I at least look more like Hunkwaman. But alright. How did Colossal edit DNA? They use a gene editing technology called CRISPR. C-R-I-S-P-R. Can I buy a vowel? Nope. It stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. It really rolls off the tongue and has a nice ring to it. This tech allows for the modification of DNA sequences. Theoretically, it could eradicate certain hereditary diseases and the like. Or it can be used to mimic traits found in other species, within reason. It's not going to let humans grow eagle's wings, for instance, but it can potentially reactivate dormant traits in similar species, say like a direwolf and its relative, the gray wolf. The direwolf went extinct thousands of years ago. Evolutionarily speaking, that's yesterday, so there is a higher possibility of finding at least some direwolf DNA more intact than, say, a 100 million year old dinosaur fossil that has turned completely into rock by now. Also, it's such a short amount of time that its direct relatives still exist. We have at least some of direwolf's DNA, enough to detect certain sequences that are similar enough to the modern gray wolf. So, kinda sorta like tracing paper, CRISPR technology is able to lay some of direwolf's DNA over gray wolf's DNA and match certain sequences as much as possible. But again, it is still 100% gray wolf DNA in the modified gray wolf. The technology easily rests on its own merits. What Colossal Biosciences is doing is amazing in its own right. No need to redefine de-extinction for the sake of increasing the company's appeal. It just, in my opinion, it doesn't sit well. As an example of how ecologically impactful this technology can be, let's imagine a species on the verge of extinction. For the sake of argument, let's suspend, at least for now, the ethical ramifications of saving a species from extinction. Remember the plight of the California condor? Anybody living through the 80s and 90s probably does. Saving the dwindling numbers of California condor from extinction was a poster child of ecological preservation for decades. It was a touch-and-go struggle, and they remain on the critically endangered list as of today. At their lowest point, they were extinct in the wild, but the 27 remaining condors were kept in captivity to encourage breeding. Today, many have been reintroduced to the wild, with total numbers around 560 or so. Imagine now that DNA editing could be used, at least temporarily, to jumpstart reproductive attributes to increase the number of healthy offspring. Now, instead of a population of 560, it was a much healthier and self-sustainable 5,600, or whatever the necessary number. DNA editing can be a godsend for preservation. But, as Ian Malcolm mentions in Jurassic Park, there could be downsides to playing God, in that Mother Nature could be picking the evolutionary winners and losers for a reason. For lack of a better analogy, what if God is tugging on the front paws while we play tug of war with the back? What if the preservation of one species wasn't in the evolutionary playbook and wreaks havoc on 100 other species' survival, or decimates them altogether? It is a very, very thin ethical line humans must walk. On the other hand, there are animals like rhinos at the brink of extinction from human poaching. DNA editing could help recover those numbers, or theoretically temporarily diminish traits that make them attractive to poachers. Or, honestly, even increasing populations for the exclusive purpose of harvesting their horns or what have you. As you can see, as with any world-changing technology, things can get bleak very quickly. The power is only as ethical as those wielding it. With DNA editing, in my sole opinion as your mental curator, if there is a dollar to be made, that thin line of ethics isn't just thin, it can be treacherous. So, that's the so-called de-extinction of the dire wolf summed up. It is not back from extinction, it is a gray wolf modified to look similar to a dire wolf. However, the technology behind this accomplishment is astonishing on its own merit. I'm actually clenching my fists as I'm reading this. It is now up to humanity to walk the ethical line of responsibility in wielding yet another great power. Here's hoping that we don't need to howl at the full moon of hindsight. I've been your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Follow the HMNS Beyond Bones podcast if you haven't already, and be sure to share it with your friends. If your podcast player allows you to rate or review, please do. You can also reach out to us via email. The email address is podcasts@hmns.org. Also, remember to check the podcast description for any links and goodies. Be sure to follow HMNS on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Blue Sky, and any other social media. You won't regret it. We can't wait to see you at any of our 3 Houston Museum of Natural Science locations: downtown in the Museum District, HMNS at Sugarland, and the George Observatory in Brazos Bend State Park. And with that, as always, stay safe and please stay curious.